Hey guys, tonight we step straight into a world where your breath turns to frost before you can finish a sentence. You're out here somewhere between the Rockies and the edge of nowhere, and the wind sounds like a pack of wolves rehearsing for an opera. The snow is blinding, endless, and honestly, if you didn't build something soon, you probably won't survive this night. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see who else is awake while the rest of the world's asleep. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through knee-deep snow, boots sinking into the powder with each stubborn step. It's the early 1800s, the era of mountain men, trappers, and fur traders, and you've wandered far from any trading post. The world smells like pine sap and frozen leather, your breath turning to steam that curls around your face like smoke. Every sound, every crack of a branch, every distant howl feels sharper, clearer, almost personal. You're not just in the wilderness now, you are the wilderness. The first thing you realize, shelter isn't a luxury, it's survival. A bad roof means frostbite by morning. A missing wall means the wind gets to decide your fate. Historians still argue whether most mountain men learned their shelter building skills from indigenous mentors or through pure trial and error. Probably a mix of both, because nobody lasts long out here without paying attention to what the locals do. You imagine one of those seasoned trappers, maybe Jim Bridger himself, glancing at your clumsy hands as you fumble with your gear. He wouldn't say much, maybe just grunt and point toward a clump of spruce trees. That's where you start, not in the open plains, not on a cliffside where the wind can chew through you, but in the low forest where snow piles softer, branches block the gusts, and fallen logs offer ready-made walls. Your fingers ache as you start clearing snow. You dig down until you hit solid ground or frozen dirt, whichever comes first. A quick mental note: flat ground is a trap. It gathers meltwater when the weather teases you with a bit of warmth. A slight slope is better, lets the runoff trickle away instead of turning your floor into a slush puddle. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember reading that early trappers carried little more than axes, knives, and raw stubbornness. No tent, no sleeping bag, just wool, leather, and layers of willpower. The wind rises, throwing a handful of ice crystals against your face. Each sting feels like a small slap, like nature reminding you who's in charge. You glance up at the gray sky and wonder if this is how it felt for those men back then. Men who left civilization not because they had to, but because they couldn't breathe under its rules. Out here, every choice mattered. One mistake, and you were part of the mountain forever. You strip small branches from the lower limbs of spruce trees, the resin sticky on your gloves. The smell is sharp and comforting, a bit like Christmas if Christmas could kill you. These branches will become your floor insulation, a spongy mat that keeps you off the frozen ground. You remember an odd historical tidbit. Some mountain men, in desperate cold, would spread animal hides fur side down on top of spruce boughs to trap air and hold warmth. It sounds primitive, but in -20 wind, primitive feels like a compliment. As the storm thickens, you keep working. Your breath fogs up your vision. The forest dims. You use a fallen log as the spine of your future shelter, stacking shorter pieces along its length. Each log fits into the next with awkward precision. Too loose, and the wind finds you. Too tight, and you waste time you don't have. You're building what's called a lean-to, the simplest form of a mountain man's refuge. Half tent, half wall, entirely hope. There's a moment, somewhere around the 15th log, where your body forgets the cold, not because it's gone, but because it's everywhere. You reach a strange calm like a trance, your thoughts slow, Your movements become mechanical. It's dangerous, that stillness. It's how frostbite wins. You shake your hands violently, force a laugh, mutter something like great vacation spot, and get back to work. That's your second joke tonight. Humor as a survival tool. And speaking of survival, here's a weird fact. Some trappers swore by carrying a little bag of pepper or gunpowder in their pocket. Why? To sniff when they started feeling sleepy from the cold. The burn in their nose would shock them awake. Scientists today might call it reckless, but hey, it worked better than freezing. As you pile snow along the base of your lean-to, you notice how the wind starts slipping over it instead of through it. Nature becomes your co-architect. You carve a small hollow at the entrance, just big enough to crawl through, and line the inside with more spruce. Your hands are numb, but your heart's racing, part panic, part pride. Finally, you strike flint to steel, coaxing a spark into a nest of bark and twigs. The flame catches, first a whisper, then a dance. The orange glow paints the inside of your shelter like a lantern in a cave. You lean close, feel the heat sting your cheeks, and exhale for what feels like the first time all night. Outside, the blizzard howls, a furious choir of wind and snow. Inside, you sit cross-legged, chewing on a frozen piece of jerky that tastes like salted stone. The fire cracks, sending up a plume of smoke that curls lazily toward the roof. You're not comfortable, but you're alive. And in the world of mountain men, that's the only victory that counts. Somewhere far beyond the trees, a wolf calls. You smile, maybe even whisper, "Good luck, buddy," because tonight you're both just trying to make it till morning. The morning greets you with a cruel kind of beauty. Everything white, silent, and sparkling, like the mountain decided to play nice for 5 minutes, just to keep you hopeful. You crawl out of your lean-to, joints stiff, beard glazed with frost, and realize the fire has died sometime during the night. There's a lesson in that. The mountain always wins if you stop paying attention. The air bites, sharp and metallic, and you can taste the cold like pennies on your tongue. You shake off snow from your shoulders and look at the axe lying half buried nearby. That old piece of steel is your lifeline now. The difference between you wake up tomorrow and you become a cautionary tale. Every mountain man knew this truth. An axe was as sacred as a rifle, sometimes more so. You pick it up, testing the weight in your frozen hands. The handle's slick from last night's frost, but you swing anyway, just to feel the jolt through your arms, the vibration that reminds you you're still made of something warm. The tree doesn't fall easily. It never does. It creaks and protests like an old man with bad knees, shedding snow as your blade bites deeper into its heart. Chips fly, a rhythm starts, and your breath falls into the tempo. Swing, inhale, exhale, swing. You start thinking about those fur trappers who worked these same slopes 2 centuries ago. They didn't have chainsaws or Gore-Tex gloves or heat packs tucked into their boots, just muscle, grit, and the occasional argument with Mother Nature. Historians still argue whether their shelters were more about comfort or just a way to not die. Either way, efficiency was everything. A fringe account, maybe half legend, half whiskey talk, claims that some mountain men could fell and split a tree fast enough to build a crude wall before sundown. You imagine one of them looking over at your slow progress, shaking his head with that unimpressed pioneer glare. You mutter, "Yeah, well, I've got Wi-Fi back home and keep swinging." That's joke number 1 for this stretch, just to keep your spirits thawed. By midday, you've got a decent pile of logs, each roughly cut and uneven, because perfection is a luxury that freezes easily. You drag them toward your shelter site, your boots crunching like breaking glass in the snow. Every pull burns your legs and shoulders, and you find yourself grateful for the ache. It means your blood's still moving. You stack the logs tighter this time, overlapping corners to block wind leaks. You wedge snow and moss into the gaps, nature's own insulation. It's not pretty, but it's starting to feel like something you could actually survive in. Now comes the tricky part: firewood. You gather smaller branches, breaking them over your knee, and soon you've got a bundle that smells like resin and wet bark. You remember reading that some trappers used to build reflector fires, two upright logs braced parallel to each other, with a third behind them, bouncing heat into their shelters. It's the wilderness equivalent of central heating, minus the thermostat. You set one up now, stacking logs like a makeshift fireplace just outside your lean-to's opening. You light the center with dry bark and a twist of grass, then add twigs and thicker sticks until the flames climb confidently upward. Soon you can feel warmth licking at your boots, your face, the inside of your ribs. You lean in close, holding your hands out until the sting turns to comfort. And because you can't resist a small experiment, you dig a trench under the fire pit, just a shallow groove leading into your shelter. Some old timers claimed it pulled warm air inside, like a primitive heating duct. Historians still debate whether this actually worked, or was just the fever dream of lonely men in too much snow. You decide to believe it, because hope, like heat, travels better when you give it a path. The wind shifts again, dropping snow from the trees in soft avalanches. You glance up and spot a bird, tiny, gray, bold enough to watch you. Maybe a Clark's nutcracker, the same kind that used to follow trappers, scavenging leftover pemmican. It hops closer, head tilted like it's judging your architectural technique. You got a permit for that lean-to? You joke. The bird doesn't laugh. Tough crowd. A few hours later, you step back to admire your upgraded shelter. It's not much: 3 walls, 1 fire, and a roof that sags just enough to make you nervous, but it's yours. You feel that strange pioneer pride bubbling up, the kind that makes men name their cabins after themselves. To test it, you toss a handful of snow on the roof. It slides off slowly, exactly like it should. For a second, you think about how much knowledge was buried in the routines of those old mountain men, things they never wrote down because they didn't think they were special. But now, every trick, every habit feels like treasure. A little-known tidbit floats to mind. Some trappers used to oil their leather clothes with bear fat to waterproof them, which meant they smelled like dinner to half the forest. One even claimed that wolves followed him for days, not out of hunger but curiosity. You wonder if that's true, or just something he told around the campfire to sound brave. Either way, you make a mental note to skip the bear grease in your own survival plan. The fire pops, sending a spark into the air. You catch yourself staring into the flames, eyes tracing the dance of light and shadow against the logs. There's something hypnotic about it, almost sacred. The same fire that can destroy can also save. You think of the mountain men again, men who carried embers wrapped in moss or bark so they wouldn't have to start from scratch each morning. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was continuity. The sun sinks behind the peaks, the light fading to silver. You duck back into your shelter, stretching out on your spruce bed, the air thick with smoke and pine. Outside, the blizzard growls again, shaking your crude walls, but they hold. The sound is terrifying and comforting at once, proof that you've carved out your small defiance in a land built to erase you. Before sleep takes you, you whisper a simple promise to yourself. Tomorrow, you'll make it stronger. Tomorrow, you'll be smarter, because out here, that's the only prayer that works. The next morning, the snow is quieter, less fury, more whisper. You push aside a small drift at your shelter's entrance and step out into a world that looks like it's been dipped in sugar and regret. The trees bend slightly, burdened with frost, their branches crackling as they sway. You stretch, feeling the pull in your shoulders from yesterday's work, and your breath fogs the air in lazy spirals. The fire's gone out again, leaving behind a black crust of charcoal and hope, You realize you've built something that works, but it's far from foolproof. A single bad storm could bury your lean to like a toy in a sandbox. So today's mission is insulation, the fine art of making something cozy out of everything that's trying to kill you. You look around: snow, trees, maybe a few rocks peeking through the white. Not exactly Home Depot, but that's the thing about the mountain men. They turned limited options into a design philosophy. Historians still argue whether their snow shelters, caves, mounds, or tree pits were born from native wisdom or simple desperation. Either way, they worked. You find a snowbank not too far from your camp, one that's been hardened by wind and cold, and jab your axe into it experimentally. The edge bites deep, revealing a solid layer beneath. Perfect. You start carving into it, pulling out chunks until a hollow begins to take shape. The trick is counterintuitive. Snow insulates, it traps air, and air keeps you warm, at least warmer than the open air would. So you dig carefully, smoothing the inside walls with your gloves, carving a small tunnel for an entrance. The space grows large enough for one person to crawl inside, curl up, and wait out the storm. You pause, looking at your work. It's like you've just built your own igloo, Frontier Edition. To make it more livable, you pile spruce branches inside, creating a bed that smells faintly like sap and home. You take a moment to rest, lying flat on your back, watching the light filter through the snow above you. It glows pale blue, soft and otherworldly. It's quiet, eerily so. You can hear your own pulse in your ears, a gentle reminder that you're still alive. That said, you can't help but laugh softly. Luxury accommodation, right? That's joke number one for today. Gotta keep the mood up. You imagine early mountain men doing the same, talking to themselves, joking just to keep their sanity. Some accounts even mention trappers naming their shelters after people they missed: wives, friends, the occasional dog. There's something tender about that, the idea of giving a name to a pile of snow just because you're lonely. But even your snow cave has limits. It's warm for a bit, then the moisture starts seeping in. The floor melts slightly under your body heat. The air thickens. You crawl out before it turns into a tomb. That's the thing about survival. You never get too comfortable. You look back at your shelter and think, yeah, it'll do for emergencies. Then you set your sights higher. A proper cabin, maybe. Not a palace, just something with a roof you can stand under. The mountain men who lasted more than a season often built semi-permanent homes, half log cabin, half fortress. Some even had crude fireplaces made of stone and mud. You remember reading that one fur trapper, Osborne Russell, described his shelter near the Yellowstone River as snug and warm, with the chimney smoking like a steamboat. You grin at that image, rough men finding joy in small victories. You gather more logs, this time taking your time to notch the ends so they fit tighter. You cut grooves with the axe, stacking each log with satisfying precision. It's exhausting work, and your arms start to shake halfway through. But there's a rhythm to it now. Swing, chop, drag, stack. The wilderness becomes your gym, your workshop, your entire world. As you build, you find a flat stone to use as a makeshift anvil, pounding out bent nails you salvaged from an old trap. The metal sings a dull note each time you strike it, music for people who've traded comfort for survival. You drive them into place using the back of your axe, then pack snow around the seams. Crude but effective. And then, as if the mountain wants to remind you of who's boss, the wind picks up again. A new storm rolls in fast, thick flakes swirling sideways, biting into your cheeks. You duck inside your half-built cabin, pressing your back against the wall. The sound outside is wild, primal, a mix of scream and whistle. You can almost feel the temperature drop with each gust. You huddle close to a small fire you've coaxed back to life. The flames crackle weakly, struggling for breath in the thin air. You feed it carefully, stick by stick, whispering encouragement like it's a frightened animal. Funny how quickly you start talking to inanimate things when you're alone long enough. And here's a strange little historical tidbit to distract you. Some trappers believed whistling in the snow would anger spirits of the mountains. Supposedly, the wind would rise and answer, hunting down whoever dared to summon it. You stop yourself from whistling just in case. No point tempting fate when you're already half a headline, local man eaten by folklore. Hours pass, the snow piles higher. Your shelter groans a little under the weight, but holds. You're learning, each wall thicker, each joint stronger. The air inside warms just enough for your breath not to freeze on your beard. You think about how every generation of humans has done this exact thing: fight the elements, curse the cold, cling to a spark of heat in the dark. Outside, the storm howls like an ancient god throwing a tantrum. Inside, you feel something strange: peace. You realize that for all the misery and frostbite, this is living in its rawest form. No background noise, no deadlines, no screens, just you and the mountain, locked in mutual respect. When the storm finally eases, you crawl out again. The world's been reshaped overnight. Snowdrifts twist into sculpted ridges, the trees bow low under the weight, and the sky glows pink with morning light. You look back at your half cabin, half snow cave combo, and you actually smile. It's ugly, it's crooked, but it's yours, and it kept you alive. That's when it hits you. Survival isn't about comfort, it's about persistence. You don't conquer nature, you negotiate with it. You step forward into the snow, boots crunching softly, breath clouding around you, and whisper, "Round 3, let's go." The mountain doesn't answer, but somehow that silence feels like approval. By now, you've started to think like a mountain man, not just someone visiting the wilderness, but someone who belongs to it. Every sound, every scent has meaning. The creak of ice on a branch tells you which way the wind's shifting. The distant crack of snow warns of an avalanche brewing somewhere higher up. You start noticing patterns, reading the landscape like a story written in white and shadow. Today, though, you're not alone, not in spirit at least, because this part of the journey is where you borrow wisdom from the real masters of survival: the trappers, the indigenous peoples, the frontier wanderers who turned hardship into an art form. You can almost hear their voices whispering between the trees, reminding you that no one ever truly goes it alone out here. Even the fiercest mountain man learned from someone else's fire. You trudge down a narrow ravine toward where you remember seeing a half-collapsed log circle the day before. It looks ancient, half swallowed by snow, but it's the unmistakable outline of an old trapper's winter camp. The logs are blackened from long-gone fires, and a rusted kettle lies half-buried near what used to be the entrance. You brush off the snow and imagine the scene decades ago: a rough-bearded man stirring something that could barely be called stew, joking to himself just to fill the silence. It's strange to think about how they survived with so little. Fur trappers of the 1820s and 1830s were the definition of minimalists before that word meant designer furniture. They carried maybe 60 pounds of gear: musket, traps, knife, flint, steel, and a few trade goods. No matches, no tents, no fleece blankets or titanium stoves. Yet they managed to cross whole mountain ranges with nothing but instinct and borrowed wisdom. Historians still argue whether most of these men leaned more on native techniques or European improvisation. Some journals claim trappers learned directly from tribes like the Crow, Shoshone, or Blackfoot how to build low, windproof lodges using saplings bent into domes and covered in hides or bark. Others insist they clung stubbornly to the habits of old Europe, stacking logs in the familiar rectangular patterns of home. You suspect the truth somewhere in the middle. Adaptation was survival. You decide to test a hybrid method yourself. You cut several young willows near the stream, their bark slick and cold. You drive the ends into the snow in a half circle, bending them until they meet and tying the tops with a strip of leather. It's crude, but it forms a skeleton, flexible, wind resistant, and fast to build. You start layering spruce branches and strips of bark over it, weaving them together until it starts to look almost cozy. The result? A shelter that looks like a half-melted turtle shell, but solid. The snow slides off the curved roof instead of building up. You crawl inside, breath misting in the low air, and smile. Not bad, you mutter. Could rent this out as a studio apartment. That's joke number 1 for tonight's chapter, sarcasm as insulation. While you rest, you remember an odd tidbit from fur trade history. Some trappers carried small mirrors, not for vanity, but for signaling distant partners across valleys. The flash of sunlight could mean I'm alive, or I've found beaver sign, or most importantly, bring food. A mirror, something you'd barely think about in daily life, could save your skin out here. You glance at the icy stream beside you and catch your own reflection. Red nose, cracked lips, eyes that look older than yesterday. The mountain ages you faster than time does. As the day stretches, you follow an old path that leads downhill toward what might have once been a trade route. You imagine the jingling of harnesses, the creak of sleds, the smell of smoke and tallow drifting on the air. Somewhere down there, men would have traded pelts for coffee, bullets, maybe a new pair of boots. The trading posts were lifelines, tiny islands of human warmth in an ocean of wilderness. You picture yourself stepping into one, the heavy door slamming behind you, the sudden rush of heat from a roaring hearth. A grizzled trader eyes you from behind a counter piled with furs. Cold out, huh? He mutters. You laugh weakly, trying to thaw your fingers around a tin mug of coffee that tastes faintly of metal and mud. Those places weren't just markets, they were classrooms. You'd pick up tricks, stories, and half-truths about how to stay alive another week. You remember one of those survival hacks passed down through the trade routes, stuffing moss between layers of clothing for insulation. It sounds ridiculous, but it works. Dried moss traps air and absorbs sweat, nature's version of down feathers. Some trappers even lined their moccasins with it when socks froze stiff. You try it now, pushing handfuls of soft green moss into your boots. It squishes unpleasantly, but within minutes, your toes stop aching. Sometimes the smartest tools are the simplest. Later, as twilight thickens, you hear a distant crack like a tree splitting in the cold. The echo rolls down the valley, long and deep. You pause, listening. Could be nothing, could be everything. The wilderness doesn't always give you warnings in words. You tighten your coat, adjust your hat, and head back to camp. When you arrive, your new willow frame hut stands proud against the wind, its bark covering rattling softly like old bones. You feed the fire until it roars again, a living thing. The orange light reflects off the snow walls, turning the whole space into a glowing cocoon. You feel the warmth seep into your skin, into your thoughts, and in that glow, you start to think about how survival isn't just physical, it's cultural. Every piece of knowledge you've used today came from someone who lived, failed, learned, and passed it on. Maybe a trapper watching a Shoshone elder shape bark into shingles. Maybe a Cree family teaching a young wanderer how to read storm clouds. Maybe just some lonely soul carving notes into a tree trunk for whoever might come next. Outside, the wind shifts again, whispering through the trees like distant conversation. You listen, half expecting to hear words in it. Maybe you do, or maybe it's just the mountain telling you what every old-timer already knew. You don't fight nature, you make a deal with it. You lean back, half asleep, firelight flickering across your shelter walls, and think, I'm learning the language. The vocabulary is cold, smoke, and silence, but it's enough. By the next sunrise, the world outside your shelter feels sharper, cleaner, like the storm scrubbed the air itself. The sky is a cold, impossible blue, and the snow shines so bright it hurts your eyes. You crawl out, stretching stiff joints, and realize your stomach's been growling since last night. Hunger, out here, isn't polite. It doesn't whisper, it growls, roars, and starts making decisions for you if you don't handle it fast. You dig through your pack and come up with a handful of jerky and a frozen lump of what was once beans. They're as solid as river stones. You gnaw a corner of the jerky anyway, nearly cracking a tooth, then laugh. Ah, breakfast of champions, you mutter. That's joke number one for the day. A little gallows humor to go with the frostbite flavor. Food wasn't just fuel for mountain men. It was time. Every bite you ate represented how long you could stay out here before heading back to civilization. When your supplies ran out, you either trapped or hunted or starved. Historians still argue whether the famous trappers truly lived off the land or depended heavily on trade posts and indigenous generosity. Either way, you realize real survival meant constant movement, constant creativity. You grab your hatchet and follow a game trail through the trees. Your breath comes in sharp bursts, fogging the air around you. There's a rhythm to walking in deep snow. Step, sink, pull, repeat. You start thinking about how much food meant comfort out here. Coffee, bacon, flour. These were luxuries worth fighting for. Some journals even mention trappers trading 5 prime beaver pelts for a single pound of coffee. You'd probably do the same right now. Then, a flicker of motion. A rabbit darts from beneath a bush, vanishing almost instantly into a white blur. Your instincts kick in. You crouch, heart pounding, eyes scanning. You've got no rifle handy, just the axe and a few snares you rigged from leftover wire. You set one near the bush, hoping luck feels generous today. While you wait, you start working on something far more immediate, a way to thaw food without burning it, or yourself. The old trappers used a method called rock cooking. You heat flat stones near the fire until they're scorching, then place your frozen food on them. It's slow but steady, and the heat radiates evenly. You gather a few smooth rocks from the creek, your fingers aching as you carry them back. Soon they're glowing warm under the coals. You lay your beans and jerky on top, and slowly, miraculously, they soften. The smell is, well, not great, smoky, leathery, faintly like wet boots, but it's food, and it's warm, and you'll take it. As you eat, you think about how every mouthful was earned. No grocery aisles, no microwaves, no late-night pizza deliveries. Just you, fire, and the patience of a saint. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a memory surfaces, an odd historical tidbit. Did you know some trappers actually preferred eating frozen meat raw because it saved fuel? They'd slice it thin, chew it until it thawed, and call it winter jerky. You shiver at the thought. That's commitment, or maybe insanity. Historians still debate where the line was. As the day drags on, your snare finally pays off. You find the wire twitching, snow scattered around it, and inside, a small rabbit, stiff and silent. You feel a brief pang of guilt, quick and human, but out here, survival doesn't have space for sentiment. You thank it quietly, something you picked up from reading about indigenous customs, and bring it back to camp. You clean it as best you can, using melted snow to rinse your knife. It's not glamorous work, but it's efficient. Soon you've got meat roasting on a stick, the smell mixing with wood smoke until it actually smells good. The first bite nearly burns your tongue, but it's the best thing you've eaten in days. You laugh again, softer this time, gourmet wilderness cuisine. That small success fills you with energy you didn't know you still had. You start tinkering around camp, building a rack above the fire to dry extra meat. The smoke helps preserve it, and with luck, it'll last through the next blizzard. The mountain men did the same. Every bit of meat stretched as far as it could go. Some even mixed it with rendered fat and berries to make pemmican, a dense, high-energy paste that could keep a person alive for weeks. You decide to try your own version tomorrow, though the lack of berries might make it more minimalist. As night falls, you sit beside the fire, belly full for the first time in days. The flames throw shadows across your face, and the forest hums around you. It's quiet, but not empty. The crackle of ice in the river, the distant hoot of an owl, the sigh of wind sliding through the trees. You think of how many others sat like this before you, staring into firelight, wondering if they'd see spring. There's a story, half myth, half truth, about a mountain man named Liver-Eating Johnson. Supposedly, after losing his wife to a crow raid, he spent years wandering the Rockies, living off whatever he could hunt and building snow shelters like the one you're sitting in now. Historians still argue how much of his legend is fact, but one thing's certain, the man knew how to stay alive where few dared to try. You smirk. Guess I'm in good company then. That's joke number 2. Humor's your secret fire now, the one thing that won't go out no matter how hard the storm hits. You stoke the real fire one last time, tucking a log into the embers. Outside, the temperature drops again, the cold creeping like a shadow. You wrap your coat tighter, pull your hat down low, and lie back on your spruce bed. The smell of smoke and cooked meat clings to your clothes, proof you're still here, still fighting. Just before sleep takes you, you think about tomorrow, about improving the shelter, reinforcing the roof, maybe even fashioning a door from bark and hide. You realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're adapting, building, planning, evolving. Like the men who came before, you're turning endurance into craft. And as the firelight fades, you let out a slow, sleepy sigh. Not bad. You whisper, not bad at all. When you wake, it's to silence, the heavy, suffocating kind that comes after a storm. You can't tell what time it is. The light filtering through your shelter's cracks is gray, directionless, and your fire has died to ash. You push yourself upright, half frozen, the smell of smoke and pine still clinging to your clothes. There's no wind, no bird calls, just the sound of your heartbeat thudding in your ears. That's when the real challenge begins. Not the cold outside, but the chill inside your head. The mountain men used to talk about it, the stillness, the loneliness, the creeping edge of madness that arrived when the blizzards trapped you for days. Historians still argue whether isolation or hunger killed more trappers each winter. You can't help thinking it might have been both, working together like a tag team of misery. You crawl out of your shelter and stretch, but the air feels heavier than before, as if the world's holding its breath. Every tree, every snowbank looks frozen mid-movement. You start pacing just to stay warm, boots crunching rhythmically through the crust. Your breath makes clouds that hang in the air like ghosts. Guess it's just us again, you mutter. That's joke number 1, because if you stop talking to something, even the cold starts to sound like a voice. You remember reading about trappers who kept journals just to stay sane, sketching, listing supplies, even writing letters they'd never send. You wish you had paper right now, though you'd probably end up drawing stick figures of frostbite and naming them. Instead, you start talking out loud, to the fire pit, to the snow, to the mountain itself. You're not so bad when you're quiet, you say, then pause. Actually, no, that's worse. The mental battle is as real as the physical one. You think about the old diaries where men wrote of nights so long they measured them in hallucinations, the sound of phantom voices, or footsteps crunching just beyond the light. The human brain, it seems, doesn't do well without company. You've only been alone for days, but already time has turned to soup, thick, slow, flavorless. To ground yourself, you start doing small tasks, reshaping the snow around your shelter, restacking the firewood, rearranging stones. It's pointless work, but it gives the day shape. You find comfort in the sound of the axe, the repetitive thud and crack as it bites through wood. The rhythm fills the silence, and for a few minutes it feels almost normal. Still, there's something eerie about this calm. You can feel it pressing at the edges of your thoughts. Every sound, a snapping twig, a drip of melting ice, makes you turn your head too fast. You catch yourself humming an old tune, though you can't remember where you heard it. Maybe your brain's trying to remind you what people sound like. And then, as if summoned, a memory surfaces, a strange story about mountain man Hugh Glass, the same one who got mauled by a grizzly and crawled hundreds of miles to safety. What most people forget, though, is that during his crawl, he was utterly alone for weeks. No fire, no human voice. Some versions of the story claim he talked to his own shadow, calling it partner. Others say he started seeing faces in the snow. Historians still debate how much of that is truth or frontier mythology, but you understand now why the tale stuck. The silence changes you. You squat beside your fire pit, trying to strike a spark. The first few flints do nothing but spit cold light. You curse softly, blow on your fingers, try again. Finally, a thin thread of smoke rises, catching on the tinder. You nurture it carefully, whispering encouragement like you're coaxing life into existence. When the flame finally blossoms, you feel a wave of relief so strong it almost makes you laugh. Fire isn't just heat, it's company. You lean close, letting the warmth stroke your cheeks. The flames dance, casting shifting shadows that look almost human. You start to imagine their old mountain men sitting with you, silent, weathered faces, nodding in approval. It's a ridiculous thought, but it makes you smile. You tell them stories anyway about the world you came from, where warmth comes from wires and walls. You tell them about lights that never go out, food that never spoils, and people who never have to listen to silence. The shadows flicker like laughter. After a while, you remember another odd detail from trapper lore. Some mountain men believed in what they called the snow madness. They said it came when the wind stopped for too long, when all you could hear was your own pulse. The cure? Movement, singing, anything that proved you were still alive. So you get up, stamp your boots, and start walking circles around camp. You even hum that half-remembered tune again, badly. The rhythm helps, your body warms, the world feels less like a void. You begin to notice small things again, the way frost crystals sparkle on bark, the faint squeak of packed snow underfoot. Life returns in pieces, tiny and patient. By midday, clouds start gathering again, rolling in from the west like bruises across the sky. You can sense another storm coming, but this time you're ready. You've reinforced your shelter, stocked extra firewood, and even rigged a small flap of hide to act as a door. You grin at your handiwork, realizing you're no longer reacting to the mountain, you're anticipating it. Before heading inside, you take a moment to stand in the open, just breathing. The wind hasn't picked up yet, but there's a strange hum in the air, a low, almost musical vibration, like the mountain tuning itself. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. For a second, it's peaceful. Then faintly, you hear something that might be laughter, or maybe it's the trees. You decide not to find out. You retreat inside, feed the fire, and settle down. The storm arrives not with fury, but with weight, snow falling thick and steady, pressing against the roof. You listen to it for hours, the steady hiss and thump becoming your lullaby. It's funny how something that once terrified you now sounds like comfort. Before sleep takes you, you murmur one last joke. If anyone finds this shelter in 100 years, please tell them I was really good at not dying. Then you close your eyes, letting the sound of snow bury your thoughts, soft and slow. Out there, the mountain hums. Inside, you finally rest, calm, warm, and maybe just a little bit mad. You wake in the dark long before dawn. The storm outside hasn't stopped, it's just changed its tone. No longer the violent howling of wind, but a deep, relentless hum, like the world itself is breathing through the snow. You listen, half awake, the rhythm syncing with your heartbeat. Inside your shelter, the air is thick with smoke and pine resin. Your fire's a whisper now, a soft orange pulse in the shadows. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and realize something every mountain man learned the hard way. Keeping a fire alive through the night isn't a skill, it's an obsession. You reach for the pile of half-dry logs, shaking snow from them, and coax the embers back to life. A few sparks, a low sigh of smoke, then the faint crackle that means you've bought yourself another hour of warmth. You sit close, feeding it slowly, careful not to smother it. The sound of popping sap fills the silence like small fireworks. You lean in, face glowing in the light, and mutter, "Come on, don't you dare die on me." That's joke number one, a quiet ritual now, talking to fire as though it's an old friend. Historians still argue whether mountain men really slept much during the dead of winter. Some say they took turns with their partners, one keeping the fire alive while the other dozed. Others claim they trained themselves to wake every hour, like parents of an angry infant made of flame. You get it now. The fire isn't just warmth, it's survival, sanity, and light against the kind of dark that eats time itself. As you feed the flames, your mind drifts to the old lore of frontier fires. Some trappers carried coals wrapped in dry moss, buried in skin pouches to preserve them between camps. They called them sleeping fires. The trick was to breathe just enough life into the embers each morning to spark the day again. It was easier than starting from scratch with frozen fingers and no patience left. You decide to try the method later. Anything that saves effort in this endless cold is worth a test. Outside, the wind shifts, low and moaning. You glance at the hide flap you use for a door, half expecting it to flutter. It doesn't. Snow's piled thick enough outside to seal you in, which is both blessing and curse. The insulation keeps warmth in, but it also traps the smoke, and after a while, your eyes start to sting. You poke a stick through the roof to make a vent, watching the smoke curl upward and vanish into the white beyond. A little oxygen makes the fire snap brighter, throwing sharp light across the walls. Shadows dance wildly, thin branches, gear, the uneven lines of snow-packed logs. It almost looks alive. For a second, you could swear you see faces in the flicker. Hard men with fur hats, women wrapped in hides, all watching you with quiet approval. You blink, and they're gone. Maybe you're tired, or maybe the mountain's testing your nerves again. You settle down with a sigh, pulling your coat tight. The heat is patchy. You're warm on one side, frozen on the other. The fire burns steady now, but it demands constant attention. It's greedy like that. You remember reading somewhere that the average trapper burned through 2 cords of wood just to last a single winter month. You believe it. Every stick feels like a little chunk of time, fuel turned into hours of life. A stray spark jumps from the fire and lands on your sleeve. You slap it away instinctively, heart racing. The brief flash of panic reminds you how fragile this all is. One mistake, a stray ember, a collapsed roof, a misjudged breath, and it's over. You laugh shakily. Good thing I'm a professional amateur. That's joke number 2. Humor, the world's cheapest survival tool. As dawn creeps closer, you step outside to gather more wood. The cold hits you like a wall. The snow's knee-deep now, glistening in pale blue light. The forest looks frozen mid-motion, every branch draped in ice. You move slowly, breaking small limbs, stacking them across your shoulder. Each crack echoes through the stillness like a gunshot. Somewhere in the distance, something answers. Maybe the snap of another tree. Maybe something alive. You decide not to think too hard about which. Back at camp, you set up a new log near the fire, this time to act as a heat reflector. Two thick chunks parallel to the flames, with another braced behind them to bounce warmth back into your shelter. It's a trick borrowed straight from the old trappers. A small upgrade, but the difference is immediate. You can feel the heat on your back now, the first genuine comfort you've had in days. You roast a bit of leftover rabbit from yesterday, chewing slowly, savoring every bite like it's a feast. The fat sizzles, the fire pops, and you find yourself smiling again. This simple act, warmth, food, quiet, feels monumental. Then a thought crosses your mind, uninvited. How many fires burned out like this, buried under snow or forgotten by history? The shelters, the men, the flickers of life in an endless winter, all gone. The mountain keeps their secrets well, but sometimes, when the wind shifts, you can almost feel their presence, like the warmth of old embers under new ash. There's a peculiar story about one such ember. Some say a single flame from the camp of a famous trapper, Jedediah Smith, was carried down through generations, a spark kept alive by frontier families as a symbol of endurance. Historians dismiss it as folklore, but you love the image, one fire surviving centuries, a stubborn refusal to go dark. The wind rises again, brushing snow off the roof in soft thuds. You feed the fire one last time, watching the light pulse against the walls. There's something hypnotic about it, an intimacy between you and this elemental force. The fire doesn't care who you are, what year it is, or why you're here. It only cares that you feed it. You whisper, almost to yourself, "All right, old friend, let's make it through another night." The flames crackle like applause. And just like that, you realize the fire isn't the fragile thing here. You are. By morning, the world outside your shelter looks like it's been erased and redrawn by a drunk god with a paintbrush dipped in white. The storm's moved on, but it's left everything buried, reshaped, silent. You push open your hide flap, and the snow creaks like a door hinge. The air's knife sharp, the kind that makes your teeth ache. You breathe in, and it feels clean enough to hurt. You step out and squint at the horizon. It's strange, after days of blizzards, you half expect destruction, but what you find is peace. The mountains glitter under a pale sun, and steam curls from the trees where the ice begins to melt. You think about how the old mountain men must have felt when the storms finally broke, relief mixed with dread. The calm didn't mean safety, it meant you had work to do. You start by digging out the fire pit, the coals buried under a crust of snow. They're still warm. You grin. See? You can't kill me that easily. Joke number one. Because even a small victory deserves a little arrogance. You blow gently, feeding the ember a whisper of air, and soon the smoke snakes up again. Another fire, another day. As it catches, your thoughts wander to the routines those early trappers built after storms like this. Historians still argue whether their lives were mostly boredom, punctuated by danger, or danger punctuated by boredom. Either way, every calm morning was spent repairing, restocking, and if you were smart, thinking about the next disaster. You grab your axe and begin clearing the fallen branches around camp. Each swing feels heavier than the last. The snow muffles sound, turning every thud into a dull heartbeat. Somewhere in that rhythm, you start to feel the pulse of the land again. The labor warms you, and for a few minutes, you forget how lonely it is up here. Then you find tracks, fresh ones. They cut a clean line through the snow, about 20 yards from your shelter, too deep and too wide for a rabbit, too steady for a deer. You crouch studying them, clawed toes, long stride. Wolf, maybe two. Your stomach tightens. The old trappers had a saying, if you see one wolf, there are 5 watching you. You remember a fringe story you once read about a trapper named Baptiste Charbonneau who swore he made peace with wolves by tossing them scraps each morning. He claimed they guarded his camp all winter. More likely, they just didn't see him as food yet. Still, the idea of wolves as silent allies feels comforting in a poetic kind of way. You like to think maybe you've earned their respect, though. If they're watching, you wish they'd pick a less suspenseful hour to do it. You toss some leftover bones from last night's meal far out into the snow, a peace offering, or maybe just a distraction. The forest accepts it without comment. You return to chopping wood, pretending not to glance over your shoulder every other minute. By midday, the sun climbs high enough to soften the top layer of snow. The air feels almost gentle, and you start thinking about how the trappers used to take advantage of days like this to scout and set lines again. You've no pelts to trap, but you still need food, and that means checking your snares. You grab your knife, pull up your hood, and set off toward the ridge. The snow crunches rhythmically underfoot, and soon you fall into that old traveler's trance, mind empty, body moving. You remember how the mountain men used landmarks, crooked trees, boulders, creek bends to navigate long before compasses were reliable. You pick your own marks as you go, little notes to self in the endless white. One of your snares has worked. A hair dangles there, frozen but clean. You mutter a quick thanks. It feels wrong not to, and pocket it. The others are empty. The quiet stretches so long it feels like a weight pressing on your ears. You start humming again, the same nonsense tune from earlier, just to fill the space. That's when you see it, a shape moving at the tree line, low, fluid, gray against white. A wolf. It stops when you do, head cocked, eyes bright like amber shards. You can't tell if it's curious or calculating. You hold still. The moment stretches thin, then it turns and melts into the forest, silent as breath. You let out a shaky laugh. Guess the deal's still good. Joke number 2. Humor is your way of talking yourself out of fear. Back at camp, you skin the hare, careful and methodical. The fire crackles nearby, the scent of cooking meat filling your small world. You can almost imagine the ghosts of trappers doing the same thing. Hands numb, bellies empty, minds fixed on survival. You're part of their lineage now, in a strange, time-bent way. A curious thought hits you as you chew your meal. Historians often paint mountain men as rugged heroes, but rarely as philosophers. Yet they must have had plenty of time to think. Days snowed in, staring at flames, pondering life's point when death was so close. Some journals even mention moments of strange clarity. The mountain talks to a man who listens long enough. One wrote, "You glance outside at the still horizon and murmur, 'I'm listening.' The wind answers with a faint sigh, like a secret it's tired of repeating. As the day fades, you reinforce your shelter again, packing new snow into the gaps, reshaping the roofline. You feel competent now, almost confident. The blizzards have tested you, but they've also taught you something about rhythm, about surrendering to the cycle instead of fighting it. The mountain men knew this lesson well. Mastery didn't mean domination, it meant respect. Before sleep, you toss another bone toward the trees, a thank you to the wolves, or maybe a bribe for tomorrow. You lie back staring at the roof, the flicker of firelight tracing lazy patterns above. You whisper, half asleep, "If I make it out of this, I'm buying a condo somewhere with heating." Outside, the night answers in soft, padded footsteps that fade into nothing. You wake before dawn again, but this time it's not the cold that rouses you. It's sound, distant, rhythmic, low. For a second, you think it's your heartbeat echoing against the snow-packed walls. But then it comes again, the faint thunk, thunk of something heavy striking wood. You freeze, every muscle taut. The sound doesn't belong to wind or animals. It's human. You crawl to the entrance and peer through the flap. The world is awash in that ghostly blue light that comes before sunrise. The forest stands still, snow-laden branches drooping like tired shoulders. Then another thunk. It's close, maybe 200 yards downslope. Your pulse quickens. Out here, people mean one of two things: salvation or trouble. The old trappers used to tell stories about both: the friend you didn't expect and the stranger who'd kill you for a can of beans. Historians still argue whether those tales were frontier paranoia or simple math. You nod to yourself. In a place like this, suspicion was a kind of survival. You tighten your coat, grab your axe, and step into the snow. The air feels different now, alive with possibility. Each step crunches softly as you follow the sound, keeping low, eyes darting through the trees. After a few minutes, you see it, a plume of smoke, faint and rising from behind a ridge. You crouch, heart pounding. Another human being. You take a breath and move closer, careful to announce yourself with deliberate noise, crunching branches, a half cough, the universal code for "please don't shoot me." You round the ridge, and there he is, a man chopping wood beside a small log shelter, his beard thick with frost, his coat patched with old canvas. His axe stops mid-swing when he sees you. "Morning," you say, raising a hand. He blinks, then grins, a surprisingly warm expression for someone who looks carved from bark. "Thought you were a bear," he says. His voice is deep, scratchy, friendly, in that wary way only mountain folk manage. You chuckle. "If I was, I'd be a very polite one." Joke number one, just to break the ice, literally and socially. He laughs once, short and genuine. "Haven't seen another soul in 3 months, he mutters. "You alone up here?" You nod, and he gestures toward his campfire. "Come warm up. You look half dead." You hesitate, but the smell of heat and wood smoke wins. You walk over, hands extended toward the fire. It feels almost sinful, that warmth, like finding civilization in miniature. The man sits opposite you, knife in hand, whittling at a stick. He introduces himself as Caleb, no last name, just that. Says he's been trapping in these mountains for years, though he doesn't look old enough for years to mean much. You trade stories. Turns out he built his shelter with logs from a burned-out ridge 2 valleys over. "Best wood's the kind the fire already tested," he says with a grin. You find yourself relaxing. The fire crackles. Steam rises from your gloves as they thaw. Caleb hands you a tin cup filled with something that smells like coffee but tastes like pine needles and regret. You drink it anyway. It's warm. He tells you about the winter of '32, when the snow came early and stayed till June. Whole camps got wiped out, he says, staring into the flames. They found one fella sitting upright in his cabin, eyes open, frozen solid, still holding his pipe. You shiver, not from cold this time. There's a quiet moment, then he grins sideways. "Don't worry, though. You're doing better than most. That lean-to of yours saw the smoke the other night." "Tight work." You blink. "You've been watching." He shrugs. "Not much else to do. You looked like you knew what you were doing. Most folks don't last a week up here. You're not sure if that's praise or foreshadowing. Still, you can't help smiling. It's been so long since someone's spoken to you, it feels almost unnatural. You start talking too fast, recounting the storms, the wolves, the endless chopping. He listens, nodding occasionally, his eyes glinting in the firelight. Historians still debate how often mountain men actually met others during the long winters. Some journals describe accidental friendships forged in blizzards, where men would share tobacco and stories until spring melted them apart again. You wonder if this, right now, is one of those moments. After a while, Caleb stands, brushing snow from his coat. "You're welcome to stick around tonight," he says. "Storm's brewing again, if I'm reading the wind right." You glance at the sky, The clouds are indeed gathering, dark bruises smudging the horizon. You nod gratefully. Appreciate it. He gives a small smile. Just don't snore. That night, you sit by his fire, watching sparks spiral upward into the chimney hole. It feels strange, sharing space, hearing another person breathe. You forgot how human that sound is. The storm begins just after sunset, soft at first, then wild. Snow lashes the roof, the wind howling like something ancient trying to get in. Caleb adds wood to the fire and says, "You ever think the mountain wants us here?" You raise an eyebrow. "You mean like, as company?" He chuckles. "Nah, more like it wants to see who's dumb enough to try and live on it." You laugh, joke number 2, but there's truth hiding in it. The mountain tests you, teases you, maybe even teaches you. You can't tell if it's cruel or kind. Later, while Caleb dozes, you stare into the flames. Shadows jump across the log walls, and for a moment you catch sight of carvings, tiny faces etched into the wood, rough but deliberate. "Keeps the spirits out," he murmurs without opening his eyes. You don't ask which spirits, you just nod, letting the fire's warmth wrap around you. Outside, the wind screams, and you feel the world shrink to the size of this small, glowing cabin. You think of all the trappers who must have done the same, 2 strangers sharing a roof while winter tried to erase them. You realize something simple and profound. Survival might be a solo skill, but sanity's a shared one. You drift off before midnight, the storm pounding, the fire humming, Caleb's soft snore proving that even here, in the middle of nowhere, you're not entirely alone. When you wake, the storm has gone again, like a tantrum spent. The air inside the cabin is still warm, the fire little more than a pile of glowing coals. Caleb's already up, stirring something in a blackened pot. The smell of it, coffee again, but this time with a faint sweetness, pulls you upright. You stretch, bones cracking, and realize that for the first time in days, you slept through the night. No snapping branches, no freezing toes, no eerie whispers from the wind, just warmth, fire, and another heartbeat near yours. Caleb glances over. "You sleep like a bear," he says. You grin. "If I snored, you didn't throw me out. That's friendship." Joke number 1, delivered with morning rasp. He chuckles and pours the coffee into 2 tin cups. "You made it further than most folks who try these mountains," he says, handing you one. "Storm season's nearly over. You'll see green soon." You take a sip. It's scalding and bitter, but heavenly all the same. Outside, light seeps through the cracks in the cabin's walls, thin ribbons of gold cutting through the dimness. You can feel it on your face, soft and tentative, like sunlight learning to be brave again. When you step outside, the world feels reborn. Snow still carpets everything, but the air has changed. It carries warmth now, a faint promise of thaw. The trees drip lazily, melting icicles tinkling like wind chimes. The sky is the kind of blue that only comes after violence. You stand there for a long moment, just breathing. The mountain looks less like an enemy and more like a stern teacher. You think about all the days that tried to break you, the blizzards, the cold, the silence, and realize they've sharpened you instead. Caleb joins you, leaning on his axe. "See that ridge," he says, pointing to the distant line of white and shadow. "On the other side, the snow's already melting. That's where I head when the pass is open." You nod, following his gaze. The horizon looks impossibly far, yet somehow reachable now. He tells you about how the mountain men used to migrate with the seasons, setting up base camps, trading in the valleys, following the rivers like veins of life. Historians still argue whether those men were wanderers or just running from something. You figure it doesn't matter. In the end, survival always looks like motion. The 2 of you spend the day checking traps and splitting logs. It feels almost like routine, the kind that builds itself out of necessity. You talk between swings about nothing and everything. Caleb tells stories of old trappers who built snow caves so perfect they'd last till spring, and one man who carved a window from ice just to see the stars. A fringe tale, maybe, but you like it. You picture him lying there, watching the universe glitter through frozen glass, and you think, yeah, that sounds like something a lonely man would do, just to remember beauty exists. In the afternoon, the wolves come back. You spot them from the ridge, 3 of them, silhouettes gliding through the snow like smoke. They don't come close this time, just linger, watching. You toss them a bone from last night's meal. Caleb laughs softly. Careful, he says. Feed 'em too well, and they'll expect you at dinner. That's fine, you reply. I'm tired of eating alone. Joke number 2, and it lands. His laugh cuts through the cold like sunlight. As the sun dips behind the peaks, the air glows in shades of rose and silver. You both sit by the fire again, quiet now, the kind of silence that doesn't need breaking. The flames dance, throwing golden halos across the snow outside the door. Caleb hums a tune, something low and slow, maybe an old frontier song. You join in on the second verse, even though you don't know the words. The melody settles into your bones. Later, when the stars prick open the sky, he says, "You heading down when it melts?" You nod. "Yeah, I think I've earned a bed and some bread that doesn't taste like bark." He smiles. "You'll miss it, though. You'll see a storm on TV and think, that's not real snow. You'll dream about firewood, and it'll feel like peace." You laugh softly, but you know he's right. The mountain has a way of claiming people, not with death, but with memory. Once you've survived it, part of you stays behind. As the night deepens, you step outside one last time. The snow glows faintly under the moon, and the peaks rise like ghosts, massive, unbothered, eternal. You feel small, but not insignificant. You feel alive. You think of all those who came before, the nameless trappers, the hunters, the wanderers who built shelters against storms that would have swallowed them whole. Their ingenuity, their madness, their courage, it's all still here, echoing in the wind. And for the first time since you arrived, the silence doesn't scare you, it feels companionable. You whisper, "Thanks for the lesson," to no one in particular. The wind answers with a sigh, gentle as sleep. You turn back toward the cabin, the firelight spilling through the cracks like a heartbeat, steady and sure. Inside, warmth waits, so does tomorrow. So now, as the fire's glow softens to embers and the night folds itself around you, everything slows. The wind outside has stopped its restless wandering. The snow, the trees, the very breath of the mountain seems to ease into stillness. You lie there, cocooned in warmth and quiet, the crackle of the fire, the only heartbeat left in the world. Your eyelids grow heavy. The scent of smoke and pine lingers, familiar now, almost tender. You listen to the faint hiss of melting ice, to the whisper of the walls settling, to your own breathing blending with the rhythm of the wild. The mountain doesn't feel cruel anymore. It feels vast, ancient, and for the first time safe. Somewhere maybe a wolf lifts its head to the moon, not in hunger, but in acknowledgement. Somewhere a spark flickers from one fire to another, a thread tying every survivor together across centuries. You've joined them now, the quiet brotherhood of those who faced the cold and learned its language. The flames fade to a soft red glow. The night presses close, heavy with peace. You let your thoughts drift like snowflakes, slow, aimless, falling toward sleep. Tomorrow the sun will return. The snow will soften. The world will start again. But for now, it's enough to rest. So close your eyes. Let the warmth sink deep. The mountain holds you. The fire hums your lullaby. Sweet dreams, traveler.